although my expertise is more on the Wasatch Front, I was inspired when I was asked to learn a little bit more about Summit County. So I think that your biggest challenge in terms of ambient air quality standards is summertime ozone levels. So when you think of air pollution in Utah, people typically think of inversions. But for Summit County, your ambient levels of ozone during the summer are very close to the national standards, and on days you're actually over them. So what forms ozone? So ozone is a reaction that requires nitrous oxide emissions and volatile organic compounds that react in the presence of sunlight to form ozone. And ozone, some of the people with more medical expertise will talk about this, but it's a lung irritant and has a number of adverse health effects. And as I mentioned, your levels are very close to or exceed national ambient air quality standards on some days in the summer. And when I look at where these sources of emissions come from, it's kind of interesting. Area sources back there are things like heating, light industry, paints and coatings, dry cleaners. Then you've got sources non-road and on-road mobile. So these are non-road are things like backhoes and tractors, and on-road are all the trucks and buses. And then you've got biogenics, which is this huge source here. Oh, I guess we've got point sources too, which are things like sand and gravel operations and anything with a big stack. But here, our biggest source of combined volatile organic compounds and nitrous oxide emissions are biogenics. So that includes any agricultural activities or all the surrounding forest lands. So you can see, basically what you've got here are a lot of natural sources that are contributing to ozone formation in the presence of sunlight. And during summer, like the month of July, you've got abundant amounts of sunlight. So in terms of the contributions, you've got some coming from over the valley, from the Salt Lake Valley. You've also got regional contributions to ozone level and precursors, but a lot of it locally is due to your natural sources. So it would be a challenge to address that. So there have been some studies done in Summit County measuring ozone. Your health department currently posts ozone levels. And during the summer of 2012, the Division of Air Quality did a study, and they found that you were over ambient air quality standards on 10 days. And that's sort of dancing on the edge of non-attainment. You need 3 years of data, and I think it's like the 4th worst day they average. So depending upon how this goes, you could be looking at a non-attainment situation for ozone in the summer. And I guess even making things more challenging, the EPA has talked about tightening the ozone standards from the current levels of 75 ppb to somewhere between 60 to 70 parts per billion. This has been highly controversial. The industry's lobbied against it, and it would be particularly challenging for a lot of counties, such as Summit County, that have a tough time regulating many sources of the precursors of ozone. And there are also high levels of background, like I said, because you've got such great amounts of sunlight. It would be a challenge for you, and many other higher altitude western counties. On the other hand, health science strongly supports more stringent standards, so it is a challenge, and EPA is currently reevaluating this, and we'll see what they come up with. And we've heard rumors that those new standards should be coming out any day now. Just finally, a little bit about fine particulate matter in the winter. So your levels of ambient levels of fine particulate matter are relatively low during the winter. So this is quite different from the Wasatch Front. So your levels are typically around 15 micrograms per cubic meter or below, and national ambient air quality standards are 35 micrograms per cubic meter. The Wasatch Front is often well above 35, and you stay well below. So in general, with regard to fine particulate matter, the Summit County is in pretty good shape. On the other hand, you do contribute somewhat to Wasatch Front in that a lot of people from Summit County do drive into Salt Lake. And so with that, I will close. I think that gives you some background on air quality.